Welcome back to the Intangible Podcast. I'm excited to start a really good conversation with a former NFL guy, Drew Davis. Drew Davis was an NFL receiver, played for the Atlanta Falcons, but he also, I hate to bring this up, but he grew up and he developed in the Pac-10 era. It's not no longer here, but everyone still remember Pac-10. So. Transitioned into coaching at UCF, went on to UCLA to coach, and then he started to find his footing and trying to figure out what he wanted, in my opinion of what I've been able to dig up on him. Went into some certifications, performance, coaching, working with the NFL Trust, doing a lot of great work for young athletes and then former athletes. And so, Drew, really, man, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast to talk about these different aspects of who we are, these different intangibles, the work that you've done. My friend, welcome to the Intangible Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Been a big fan of the show. Been watching it for a while. Went back and listened to a couple episodes as well from when you first started and how you didn't want to start this because you thought there were too many podcasts out there, which is the same thing I thought when I started mine. But I'm glad you found your footing. I know it's been really valuable for parents and athletes out there. So kudos to you and thank you for having me.
Man, he does some research on me, so I appreciate that, man. It's been a fun journey. I will say it's been a fun journey, and the response and the people that are, continue to give the support and say, keep doing what you're doing. I really have appreciated that. And so, all right, man. All right, here we are. A young man who was undrafted into the NFL, went over to UCLA as a coach, and has now been over at the NFL PA side of things. You've seen a lot. You've seen a lot of different things. When you think about those different roles that you've played in the mindset and the tenacity, the grit and things that it takes to do what you've done, what does it really take to make that transition into those different spaces, knowing what I would say actually starting to figure out what your new purpose is as you've kind of going through each one of those different transitions, because it is a different purpose at every stepping stone.
Definitely. I would say through all of that, I had to really figure out what it was that my purpose was, and then also just what I like to do and what I enjoy doing. Early in the time in college, I really realized and noticed that everybody would come to me for advice. And not that I would always give them advice or tell them exactly what to do, but I'd help them find the way to get to the answer or get to the product that they wanted to get to. And so I knew I loved helping people, loved just guiding them in a way. And then also just as a passion, wanted to do something that didn't feel like work. And although I got into coaching at the beginning, because, as many football players, that's what we know, as many athletes, we've been doing that since the age of 8 or 10. So we have 10, 15, 20 years of experience doing that. But I had a director of player development when I was at Oregon by the name of James Harris, and he was a person that everybody just went into his office, when they had a family member pass away, or when they were going through some problems in school, or just when they just wanted to have a place to hang out and talk to him. And he was a young Black guy who was married, had one kid at the time, and you didn't feel like he was part of the staff, and you also just knew he wasn't a player. But the way we played around with him, messed around with him, he felt like one of the guys. And at a certain point in my life, I was like, man, I want to do something similar to that, something that doesn't feel like work, still being around football, still being around sports, but you know as well as I do that athletes, they have so many years of having a coach, having somebody tell them what to do, what they need to work on, look over film with them, how they need to get better. And then at a certain point in your career, you pretty much go cold turkey from that. There's no coaching. There's nobody to sit there and wake you up, to call you, to come get you from your dorm room to come to practice. And so I felt the need that there are a lot of people out here that need a coach to coach them in life, whether they played sports or not, but also somebody to push them and challenge them and to kind of get into realms of of, hey, what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? Let's explore that and figure out how to get you there. So a lot of it was me exploring what I wanted to do by taking some little side quests, going to coach at Central Florida and work on my master's, then coming to UCLA and acting as their director of player development. I just wanted to help young men along the way, and then also watch some football and stay in shape while I did it. So it was a way to kill a couple birds with a couple stones.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, like I said, I mean, you've seen both sides of this thing, and not just both sides from a being a coach and doing what you do now, but also you've seen both sides as a player, and a guy who's trying to make it, a guy who's going through a transition, athletes who, now that you work with, who's trying to make it and going through those different transitions. How many athletes do you think was prepared for life after football? And then in that same vein, were you prepared life after football? Maybe answer that one first.
Yeah, no problem. I think probably maybe 25% are ready for life after football. And I wasn't, even though I had all the right things in place. And one thing that really helped me to kind of get ready and think about life without football was tearing my ACL my sophomore year at Oregon after my very first start. Talk about the most troubled and perfect scenario for a movie that you can write, but it's real life. And during that time, after I tore my ACL, I really had to sit down and think like, man, what would I do if football wasn't here? And that's when I started doing more with our director of player development. That's when he pulled me to the side and I started doing more meeting with the boosters. I started doing more community service, going into school, talking to the young people, telling my story. And then also at the same time, I really got this feeling that like, okay, I'm more than just a football player. I can do stuff outside of this. I just haven't done much of that over my time period and my time frame. A lot was focused on football because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get a scholarship and go to college. I wanted to play in the NFL. I wanted to have a lengthy career in the NFL. So everything that I did mirrored that. But once I tore my ACL, I started thinking and developing more as a person. And that's when I really found out that I can really help people. I have a knack for helping people and connecting with them. But I feel like not that many players and athletes are ready for life after college because one, you got to really get into it to feel what that's like. Like I said, without anybody calling you to chase you down for you being late for training table, without nobody seeing where you are at practice, you go from, playing your bowl game if you're a football player to possibly training for, the combine and pro day, but you don't have anybody waking you up. You don't have anybody checking on you. Even if you did have a great coach in college, that coach now has more players to coach and getting ready for the next year that's upcoming. So it's not their fault, but also it's just not being in that situation. We can talk about it until we're blue in the face as far as, hey, you guys need a resume. You guys need a cover letter. This is how you do your interview. This is how you shake a hand. This is how you make eye contact. But until you have that lifeline and that kind of life raft taken away from you of your sport, and you're really sitting there and you're looking around and you're like, oh, snap, it's really here. So sometimes it's about us really being in that experience until it really hits home for us. And like I said, a lot of football players, we don't know it's over until we don't get picked up on the team or we don't get drafted or we don't get invited to a mini camp or a training camp. And then that's when it becomes more real. But along the way, I just had a lot of people pouring into me and I knew that I was smart. I knew I was intelligent. I knew I was a hard worker. So it wasn't that I wasn't good at anything else. It's just that I hadn't taken the time to really dive in and pour into a lot of other things outside of football and sports.
Yeah, man. I think about this in the mindset of reps. It's, we've taken majority of our life and got a lot of reps at one thing. And now, is it fair for us, even on the other side, looking back, hindsight, and also as an athlete who's making that transition out, is it fair to expect us to fall right into these different aspects of newness and really do well at it? And so I guess my question is, the pressure and the that we put on ourselves. Do you think it's fair for us to put that kind of pressure to fall right into this next stage of life and not have any setbacks? Because you think about our career, there's always been, setbacks to learn so you can get more reps to get better at it. And what's that bridge to make sure that you are actually putting the reps in to continue to get better?
Yeah. No, I don't think it's fair, but I think as athletes, we always want to be the best. Anytime we step out there to practice or we pick up a ball or we're playing hopscotch or skipping rocks across the pond, like we want to be the best at that. And the thing I try to talk to a lot of clients about is, the first time you picked up a football, a basketball, a baseball, I highly doubt you were like, oh my gosh, that was the greatest throw ever. Like, I'm going to be really great at this. Like, we all had that kind of period of just transitioning and really learning the game and kind of being taught and being coached, I guess you can say. And so when I look at the overall scheme of everything with people that kind of go into it, it's just, we don't want to suck at anything for too long. We don't want to have to learn and start from the bottom a lot of the times. Some of it's that bravado that we've gotten from our sport, but also it's how the world goes. So if you spent so much time focusing on your sport, imagine 10 or 15 years where you focusing on something else. It takes 10,000 hours to be, an expert at something, as Malcolm Gladwell says. And looking back into that, I 100% agree, because between high school and college, like, I was putting in time on the weekends, going and throwing with a quarterback or working out with my high school coach on the weekend or after practice or after a weight room session. So it takes that kind of, like you said, getting those practice reps. It takes those, and it takes us to get those in different realms and different areas and careers in order for us to catch up. But the thing that I said works in our favor is we have a dogged work ethic. We know what it's like to compete against other people who are going for our same job. We know how it is to line up against somebody or across from somebody who might be better than us. And we know they're better than us, but we still have to play this play. And within that play, you might win a couple that you didn't think you were going to win, but it's because your preparation, it's because how you prepared, it's because you actually have to roll the ball out there and play these plays and go through it. So for us, we need to have a little bit more grace with ourselves and knowing, and that was a big problem for me, is I finished with the NFL and I got out and I'm looking at people who I graduated with who are working at jobs and, they're moving up the ladder. And I'm like, oh, I'm behind. I'm panicking. I'm saying, oh, I'm behind. Even though I went and played and did exactly what I wanted to do for my NFL career and for a dream that I had when I was young, I'm still telling myself in my mind, I'm behind. I don't have my master's yet. I haven't had a real job, quote unquote, as a student athlete would say. But all the intangible and the skills and the values that you gain from your sport, turn around and use that in the career that you're chasing, and you're going to be very successful.
Oh man, that key takeaway there is give yourself grace, and with a dogged mindset, the work ethic, it's easy for us to fall into the trap of, man, I'm the best at it right now, versus building up to become the best like you did in your sport. And so having that mindset, that key trigger word for it is having that grace. Give yourself a little grace as you continue to get the reps, understanding there will be setbacks, but also knowing that those setbacks turns into big gains because of the work ethic that you're willing to put behind it, man. So that well said. All right. Now, when I think back to some of the things that I, was looking at about your past and things like that, I always think about people's upbringing, and seeing that you grew up in Denver. You got your start at Oregon. Take me back to the early mindsets and those foundational pieces that shaped you growing up in Denver, that transition you over into Oregon to excel the way you did.
Yeah, no problem. I just remember growing up, man, I was a football and sports fanatic. Like, on the Saturday morning, we in high school and in Little League, sometimes we play games on Friday or Saturday morning. But I just remember getting up and like turning on college football and watching College Game Day and watching around that time, Michigan and Nebraska were on TV a lot. And so I'm thinking and I'm looking at, I knew all the players, I knew where they were from, and I'm looking at a lot of places they were from. And I don't think I really saw rarely anybody from Denver, from the state of Colorado. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, either it's really hard to make it or I don't know where the heck the people are from Colorado that are going to school, where they're going. So we got to find it. We got to make one. But just growing up, baseball was the very first sport I played because my mom didn't want me to play football. She was afraid I was going to get hurt. And my Little League coach talked to her, and I was a big kid. And so my Little League coach heard this, and he goes up to her. He says, ma'am, I don't think you have to worry about Drew getting hurt. I think you got to worry about Drew hurting other kids. So if you're afraid that he's going to get hurt in this sport, like you can get that out the way right now. But I just loved football, and I wanted to go to college and play football from an early age. I know my parents and my family didn't have the money to send me to college. Like most middle class or lower class Black families, it would have been taking out student loans and things like that. But excelled at football and baseball when I was young. And then when I got into high school, played running back at first, but then I linked up with my mentor, who's like a big brother. His name is Palika Houston. And And we know at that age, it's tough to have a work ethic, but then it's also tough to pair that with somebody who wants to help you or somebody who has the time and energy to help you. And he's a person that had the time and energy to help me. And once he learned that I really was serious about football and I do pretty much anything to get there, that's when our Saturday and Sunday morning started consisting of going to a random field on a Saturday morning at 6, 7 a.m. When I usually would have been watching cartoons, I'm out here jumping a fence to get onto a nice field to be able to run some routes and catch some balls and get some conditioning in. And once we started doing that at the end of my freshman year, continued throughout high school, and then the offers started rolling in. And so by the end of my junior year, I had 26 scholarship offers to play Division I football, and I was going to graduate early from high school, so I kind of had to stop accepting them because I had to dwindle them down and figure out where I wanted to take trips to. And that's the beginning of the process for me. And even outside of that, like I wanted to play football, but I had seen so many athletes before me who were better than me who didn't make it to college, whether if it was grades, drugs, girls, just not concentrating and focused on the right things. And I said I didn't want that to be me. And so I did really well in school to the point where, I think I just had to score 18 on the ACT. But also, my dad wouldn't let me bring home anything less than a B. So for anybody out there that has African parents, they know that the standard is super duper high. Right. And so paired with those two things of my dad not letting me bring home a B and me wanting to not have anything hold me back from going to college and playing Division I ball, I poured everything into those two things, and it ended up coming out right on the other end. And then the two schools it came down to for me were UCLA and Oregon. And I could still not really tell you why I chose Oregon. I went to UCLA on the trip. They beat SC. I think it was 13-9 to knock them out the national championship. They're filming videos on campus, or they're filming movies on campus. And you're in LA in December, and it is like 80 degrees, sunny. People are walking around in shorts and suntanning. And then Eugene, I went to the game. They got whomped on by Arizona. It was rainy. It was cold. Just everything that could go wrong on a trip did go wrong. But the thing that I felt in my heart and my stomach was that the coaching continuity they had was great. And then also just everybody A to Z, you felt you got a genuine interaction from everybody. There was nobody that was putting on or faking or telling you, hey, you're going to come here. You're going to start for 3 years. It was a lot of everybody just being themselves. And I just felt really at home at Oregon. And so that's what took me to the Ducks.
Yeah, man. I was going to ask that question. I get that question all the time from parents. Like, how do I help my kid through this process? How do we help them narrow it down? What's that final decision to say this is the place I'm going? And with the era that we're in right now with NIL and the transfer portal, and there's so much money moving around, what advice would you have for a parent, a kid, a young athlete who's going through this process, but very, very distracted because of the money and because of the social pressures and things like that, to help them really clearly see, where is the right fit for my development?
One, I would say don't make it about the money. I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I champion that the athletes are getting paid now. Like, I love it because they make so much money off of their name and likeness, and being able to do that in their controlled environment is a great thing. But sometimes when we make it about the money, we overlook all the other things. And just like you, I consult for a couple families and people that have reached out. And I had a family that reached out to me, and they're talking and they're like, we don't know where we want to send them. This school wants to pay him this much and this school wants to pay him this much. I'm like, okay, that's great. I said, okay, well, where does he want to go? And they're like, oh, well, this school offered this much and this school offered this much. And I was like, okay, once again, where does your son want to go? But at the same time, I talked to him for a little bit. And then I said he was an outside linebacker. And I said, okay, this school's offering this much. That school's offering that much. I said, okay, what defense does each school play? And they didn't have an answer for it. Oh, I don't know. Okay, well, that matters, because if he's playing linebacker, outside linebacker, if he's a rush in a 3-4 versus a 4-3 playing off the ball, if you're saying he needs to get after the quarterback, a 4-3 probably is not the best thing for him as a linebacker. Right. And so, you have to have these more IQ and more X's and O's conversations with them. And that's something, if you're a parent, if you didn't play football or if you don't know that side of it, you don't really know. But it's more so, I say, don't just look at the money, because the money's great. But if I told you if he's able to make, I don't know, $300,000, but he doesn't play it down, are you okay with that? Right. Rather than him go and play and be able to be an All-American and play 70, 80 plays a game and make an impact, but he's getting 100,000. but also, does he want to go to the NFL? Is he using this? Is this his last stop on what he wants to do for as far as an athletic career, or does he have aspirations to go further? So it's just layering. I just start layering questionings with them to get them to see the bigger picture, and then also just being able to grab as much information as you can. It's really important to go to a place where you feel comfortable. Our guts, we've gone away from our gut instincts, which has been around since we were Neanderthals, which should tell us, yo, I probably shouldn't look behind that bush because there might be a lion back there. But like a lot of those feelings that we have are still alive and well. So if you have the gut feeling that, man, I don't know what it is about this place, but I think I could come and thrive here, look into it more, listen to it more, and sometimes be able to go with that rather than looking at the money and the numbers and all the NIL stuff that you might get. Because the last time I checked, in order to get to the NFL, you got to play some downs. You got to get out there and make some plays.
Exactly.
So having a bank account full of money is great. But if your real overall goal is to play at the collegiate level, my biggest advice and guidance to you is go do that, and the money will come.
3, 2, 1.
Parents, the recruiting process is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever face for your child. And talent isn't enough. Coaches are looking for the intangibles, like composure, coachability, communication, and leadership. And that's what Team Q measures. Get clear insights into your child's intangibles so they stand out when it matters most. Go to teamq.io and help your athlete unlock greatness.
When you think about back to your upbringing, and the work that you're doing now, what do you feel like shows up that you've been able to carry over from your upbringing to now?
Man, like I say, the hard work. I watched my mom and dad get up constantly every day, rarely called into work. You'd all see them go out the door. I was a latchkey kid, so, parents would leave, go to work. You had to get to school, get back home, do your homework, do your chores, and then you're good to go. But I rarely saw them call in. I rarely saw them complain. I rarely saw that, times where they passed the buck or didn't take accountability for stuff. And so I took that into a lot of what I did with sports. I was very talented when I was younger. And then, when I got to high school, I was one of the most talented. And then when you get to college, everything kind of levels out. There's a lot of people that got some talent and things like that. And so what's helping you separate yourself from them? And usually the thing is hard work, because a lot of people, they start to get by off of their athletic ability. They've always been the fastest. So why would I do any speed mechanics to work on being fast? And I've always been the fastest. Right. So I got that work ethic from my parents, and then just also mentorship. Mentorship is one thing I'm really big at, because they say if you know something, when you know something so well because you can teach it to somebody else. Yeah. And so what I started getting real good at when I was at Oregon and in high school, I mastered what the X receiver is going to do. Now, what does the Z receiver have on every play? What does the Y receiver have on every play? What does the R have on every play? And you start to be able to get all those concepts, and you know what everybody's doing. So I knew when the ball was coming to me and when it wasn't. And that helps you as a receiver, because sometimes you take some plays off to save some energy, but also just knowing when that ball is coming is very good, because then okay, how am I going to get open? How am I not going to get open too soon to the point the window's not there? And so those two things are just great work ethic, and just being able to outwork everybody that I line up against and that's across from me. And then also just having a high football IQ and being able to mentor the younger generation, because nothing's better than you being at a school and being a junior or senior, and you want that school to keep winning when you're no longer there. I hope you do, because I don't want to be watching TV and my college or my high school is getting beat on. But are you teaching the younger generation the right way, or how to do this and how to be a leader? Because you're only going to be around there for so long. So those two things are very cornerstone and foundational things that goes into being Drew Davis, because I feel like there's never anybody that says, oh man, he works too hard. You don't work hard enough. And that's one of the things I love to hang my hat on.
Yeah. Hey, so being around the Oregon program, at a high elite time, again, there's a lot of demand, but you seem like a guy who was, always was being very observant and looking at, what was happening around you. When you think about that time, what was some of the little things that separated the guys who actually made it, and the guys who just they were close, but they just couldn't get over the hump?
Man, it was always the little things, man. Are you where you need to be on time? Do you do what you say you're gonna do? Not just being able to show up in the weight room, but show up in all areas and facet. Training table. Are you getting into the cold tub and the hot tub? And are you getting treatment on that little ankle or that pinky that's been bothering you for a while? The thing I revert back to a long time, but we had some great players that came through Oregon. And when I was a young guy, we had a lot of great DBs that were older than me that I got to watch. And like, we're wide receivers, so we go against the DBs a lot. So, we have this special relationship. But we had, some great defensive backs. We had Jarius Byrd, we had Patrick Chung, we had Walter Thurman, we had TJ Ward. All those guys got drafted and went to the NFL, and I think 3 or 4 of them have Super Bowl rings. But during the summertime, I watched them a lot, and they would always compete and challenge each other. Whenever they dropped the ball, you would always see them doing push-ups on the sideline. Whether they dropped the ball or they didn't break on something right, I think they would try to do 100 or 200 push-ups within our 7-on-7 session. And if you dropped the ball, you had to do even more. Like, I think it was like 25 or 50 got added onto that. And so you got to see firsthand guys that, like, it's not fun doing push-ups, but that accountability that you have with your teammates. Right. If I can't have my teammate be on me about me not making a play and me dropping a ball, like, then what can I really do in life or just on the field? Like, that type of accountability, if you get that from the player standpoint, then the coach's jobs are easier, because they're like, well, they know how they feel when they let each other down. So I know they're going to come out here and be on their stuff. So it's about having that accountability and creating that camaraderie with each other. And like I said, it was more so, and it wasn't that they were on each other because they knew we were destined for bigger things. They didn't care what the score was. They knew defensively and secondarily, if we lose a game, it's not going to be because of us. Like, if we doing bad one game, it's because they ran for 300 yards, not because they threw for 300. So the accountability between them, and like I said, I'm very observant, so I saw that. I try to bring that into the wide receiver room, and you do it with love. Like, it's one thing to get on one of your fellow teammates and cuss them out and call them every name in the book. But it's another thing to bring them in close and tell them, hey, you should have did this better, but hey, I believe in you. We're going to get it next time. Like, that does so much for the psyche, for the ego, for your interaction with him. Then when you talked about mentorship, that's how they pass that down. That's how they coach somebody who comes after them when you're gone. That same mode of just, hey, we got each other's back because we care about you and we know you can be great or you wouldn't be here any otherwise. And so just that sense of brotherhood early on at Oregon is really kind of what separated people. And it's just that sense of care where you knew, hey, I don't want to let my teammates down, rather than my coach or my school or, my university. It's like, I'm accountable to that guy that I line up with every day.
The little things, man. The little things. I didn't hear you say how much you bench. I didn't hear you say how big your bank account, how many social media followers you had. It was the little things and being accountable to the little things. No, that's great, man. Well, we all want to get drafted. We all, we play this sport. If you have the desire, this is what I want to do. I want to get myself in a position to get drafted. You end up going undrafted, but you still earn a roster spot for the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm always curious about, like, when you go undrafted, is there a switch that flips to a different mentality when you go undrafted? Did anything for you come up around that?
For me, it was a very special situation because the year I came out was the lockout year in 2011. So things are very, very different. They lifted the lockout for, I think, the first round of the draft, and then they put the lockout back in place after the first round. So I was back in Denver working at Red Bull and DirecTV before I got a call from the Atlanta Falcons to go there. So I literally was, working with normal people and then went to go be an NFL player. Which is also another movie in itself. But just from that, like I said, I've always kind of had that chip on my shoulder. And you come into the Atlanta Falcons, they had gave up 5 or 6 draft picks to get Julio Jones as a wide receiver. Right. They have Roddy White that's already there. They have Tony Gonzalez that's there. They got Matt Ryan at quarterback. Like, you're not playing over those guys. These are future Hall of Famers and Tony Gonzalez and Ring of Honor people and Roddy and Julio. But, like, so you go there and you're like, all right, I got to find a spot that I could fit in. And it's more so like, okay, I'm here, but what am I going to do to stay here? And one thing I did at the University of Oregon, I played on special teams. I was a very good blocker. And like I said, when you're at a good college program, if you at a really good college program, they have really good special teams because they have guys and they have all this talent that they can't fit onto the field on offense and defense. So then finding your lane on special teams is really, really beneficial for you because in the NFL, it's still the same. Not a lot of people want to do special teams. Everybody want to catch touchdowns. Right. Everybody want to have they face at the front of the program, all that kind of stuff. But when you find your lane and a guy like Matthew Slater, who did it for New England for a long, long time at a high level, we played against him when he was at UCLA when I was in college. Those people make it really discouraging to play in a game where dang, this dude is going all out on special teams. Like he need to slow down. He's trying to get, and he ends up getting drafted. So for me, it didn't light an extra fire. I just had to go back into all those things that I did really well. Outworking everybody, knowing the playbook. So I knew X, Y, Z. I knew what the running back had coming out of the backfield. So if we went 4 or 5 wide receivers, I knew my receiver coach would be like, well, Drew knows his stuff. He can play any position. We could put him anywhere. That made me more versatile. That made me more valuable. Oh, and he can play on special teams. And when you get to that level, if you're a guy that's on the fringe or on that borderline as far as who do we dress out this week, who do we cut, they're going to look at the person that can do the most, and I'm glad that's what happened with me. And I got cut my first year, got put on the practice squad, got cut my second year, got put on the practice squad. But then I made the roster even my second year after they cut me because somebody got hurt. But that's for me being in the right position. That's for me being in the right place to make these things possible. So I just continue to do what I did best. I dug a little bit deeper, spent more time in the playbook, knowing, hey, when am I hot as a receiver? If two guys come off the edge, this and that, to the point where the quarterback and the coaches and my other receivers looked at me and they're like, well, Drew knows his stuff. Like, he's going to be able to play because when he's out there, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I think the number is still 50% of the NFL is made up of undrafted free agents. Do you think that there's a misunderstanding about the label of being undrafted?
I do think there's a misunderstanding, and I think being drafted, of course, that goes with the stats that you were able to occur in college and your potential that you have. But I also think there's value in being passed up. Do we all have a villain origin story where, that girl that didn't go to the prom with us, she's hating now. She's probably mad and knocked up now that she ain't with us. But it goes along the lines of that. You can't measure heart. You can measure 40 times and bench press and all this. But let's be honest, some people peak later. Some people just need that one opportunity. Some people, like if you're, I think it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he got drafted, but he wrote down all the names of the players and the wide receivers that were drafted before him. And now he's one of the best receivers in the league. So there's some people where there's different things that light the fire within you. And when you got undrafted people, that just means that you got to work even harder to get it. And for me, it just means that now hey, nothing's given to me. I wasn't drafted. I didn't get a signing bonus. They flew me here or they drove me here on a Greyhound bus. I didn't get all the same things everybody else got, but I still have this opportunity and this chance. And for me, you look at guys like, Debo, who's coming off the edge, James Harrison, undrafted guys, they just have this don't quit. They just have this dogged work ethic, I can get cut tomorrow, so I'm going to do everything I can to be here today. And that type of thing goes with you. So I just think and there's this understanding between, teams and undrafted players as far as there's some guys you see dang, how did they miss you? And that's the good thing about it. When you roll the ball out there, you go play and nobody's worried about, oh, he's a first rounder, he's a fifth rounder, he's an eighth rounder, whatever it might be. They're like, nah, he can play. And he's going to get a new contract soon. So it's a matter of just undrafted guys. It's a label I wear and I make sure I tell people undrafted because when I go talk to schools and students, they're like, hey, what round did you get drafted and how big is your mansion? I'm like, I didn't get drafted and my apartment is about 1,400 square feet with an attached garage. But that's what helps me help relay them. The goal was never to get drafted to the NFL. It was to play. And that's what I kind of continuously tell myself. If I get the opportunity to do it, I'm going to take full advantage. Yeah,
man, that's awesome. And now because of that, you get to have conversation with these young athletes and parents who is pushing for their kids and want their kids to have that kind of dream. What's the real conversation with athletes now and their parents when it comes to playing at the next level, the dream and the goal to play at the next level? What is that real conversation?
The real conversation, honestly, is funny because it varies based upon family, but it's also, is this your son's dream? Is this your daughter's dream? Or is this your dream? I think we're dealing with a lot of that now where a lot of parents are pumping money into stuff because they're like, hey, this is our way out. This is a way for me to never have to work again, or just, hey, we know he has a talent to make it. And if he makes it, then he's going to take care of the rest of the family. It's a lot of pressure we put on these athletes to
A
go out
lot
there
of
and do
pressure.
something that's very hard to do, even if they want to do it. And so the first conversation is saying, hey, are we sure that he wants to play this sport to the pinnacle it can go to? And then secondly, it's what are you doing as a parent to support him outside of being a football player, outside of being this athlete that you guys have labeled him and known him for being since the age of 8. And so a lot of that goes into that is really just kind of, like I said, going down and layering the questions, but really pulling everything back and saying, okay, if going professionally, if making it to the NFL or NBA or whatever, if that doesn't happen, what else do you see your son being great at? It's having these conversations of pouring into their son or daughter in other ways, because we've always gotten this sense of accomplishment or pats on the back and support when we go out there and we drop 40 points or we throw 6 touchdowns or we make 22 tackles. But are you giving them that same energy when they bring home an A on a test? Are you consoling them the same way when, they have a breakup with their boyfriend or girlfriend? Like, are you still being that supportive parent that's there for them in these other ways that help them build each other as young people? And so that conversation of if they can play at the next level, it's, hey, how are you stacking up with the competition right now? Are you going to all the camps that you can go to, or are you hiding? Are you taking all the workout sessions you can possibly take? Are you for real about where you are talent wise? I've had conversations with parents and families where the family's like, yeah, he's not going anywhere but a D1 school. And I'm like, well, is the goal for him to go to a D1 school, or is it for him to play college football? And so you get into all these other conversations where these days are as good as any for somebody to go somewhere that's not a Division I,
Right.
because there's all these transfer rules and there's these
Right.
coaches that want to go grab players that can play right away. So where
Right.
you start might not be where you finish. And
Right.
so a lot of that is getting on the same plane with them to really figure out, hey, what are we trying to do here? What are we working towards? And then also getting them to look into their family dynamic and seeing, hey, is the pressure that we're putting on our kid making him think that he needs to go to the NFL because of us? And that's a lot of the body of the work I do.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. Because of the work you do, when you think about, your time as a player development at UCLA, did you notice patterns that kept these reoccurring themes that kept coming up that made you think like, oh man, this is where I think I can go and pour my gift into to really help develop young athletes outside of the college space?
Yeah. I was just really good at connecting with them, a lot of times, and this is what I really loved about the job. A lot of times I was talking to him, it wasn't even about football. I go, we can talk about practice, we can talk about the game a little bit, but I'd be like, hey man, who's that young lady you're walking around campus with? You said what's up to me, but you didn't introduce her. You got to work on your social skills a little more, man. You got to, if that's your lady, you got to. So like I developed this rapport with them to the point where I'm asking about movies, I'm asking about classes, I'm asking about what they want to do community wise or just a nonprofit and things like that, to the point where I'm getting great feedback on who they are outside of that helmet. And then I can pour back into them as far as, hey, you said you like movies a lot, right? You take any film classes on campus? UCLA got a real good film school. Like you should really take a couple classes, maybe minor, figure out what you want to do with that. And I can kind of pour into them in a way that's different than the coaches because I didn't care about the football stuff. Cool, you score a couple touchdowns, I'm gonna give you a big hug and give you a pat on the back. But also the thing for me is when you come back to me years later and you're like, man, Drew, thank you so much for telling me to take those film classes. Like now I'm writing a couple scripts and I got a movie that might be a green light for a movie that might be coming up soon. And I would have never had that opportunity if it wasn't for you. So it's seeing things deeper into just their athletic ability. It's really seeing who they are as people, really challenging them to be somebody other than just the athlete for everything they do. And then also for them to just take that same energy, that same effort that they put into football and put it into this other aspect that's new and foreign to them. But if they attack it with the same tenacity, they're going to get similar results that got them that scholarship to go to college and that got them all these different accolades. And they're going to see that they can outwork people.
Yeah. Again, working with young athletes, but making that transition to working with high performers, and young athletes are high performers, just a different stage. You're working with some really successful, high performing people, other than hard work, what's an underrated? Let's go with underrated.
Mm-hmm.
What's an underrated intangibles you see from high performers that really people don't really think about?
The people that handle that take the most mundane things and make them important. The people that you see them, the consistency with their routine and their schedule, like know a lot of authors and they get up and they write 500 words every morning. Like that's what they do to write their books and that's how they get there. So, as athletes, sometimes we don't like doing the mundane stuff, the stretching that we do every time, the warm up that we got to do, the protein that we got to drink and all that kind of stuff. We're not great at that a lot of the times because you're like, man, I don't need to do it today. What's going to happen if I don't do it today? And that's a lot of thought process. But the people that do the mundane things at a high level is pretty much what I see people that do great things with. The people that continue to show up. I go to the gym at about 4:30 every morning, and there's just a certain group that's there, same time every day, no matter what the weather is, no matter what they did the night before, and it just creates this purpose and this kind of just this system of that's what you do. And so if you're able to have a very good system in place where you have a lot of consistency, that brings accountability. That's very hard to break. It takes 3 weeks to make something a habit. It takes 2 or 3 days to destroy that habit. And so a lot of people, the high performers that I see, they have really great habits. And I'm not saying that they sit here and, write 10,000 words every day and do this, but no, they're just really methodical in what they do and how they prepare. And I would also say just their preparation for something. When I go on stage for a keynote speech, just know I've done that speech about 50 to 100 times to the point that's going to look easy. But just know it's just like a duck. I was paddling them feet under the water like crazy. I might look smooth and calm above it, but that's because I've had so many reps in doing it. So those are the two things I would say. They master the mundane, and then they also are able to just pour in time and prepare like crazy.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Man, I think I can ask you this question. Well, I know I can ask you this question. I'm sure you've thought about this. If you had to really build an athlete from scratch, what intangibles are non-negotiable that you're putting in this athlete?
Ooh-wee. To be honest, and this is a funny thing, I don't think I've said this, vulnerability. I'm going to put vulnerability in there. Somebody that knows, like, I'm not the greatest at everything. I'm not the best. I have this problem. I'm not as good in this area, because that's going to help him get people around him to buy into what he's doing, because everybody has deficiencies. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to put a leadership quality of just being a leader. I don't think, with a lot of the work I do, I'm trying to create more leaders, more role models, and more gentlemen. That's one thing that's very high on my list. But for leaders, there's this sense now that, leading, I don't want to be the one that has to tell somebody not to do this or have to be the bad guy to get people to do this. But in essence, it's being accountable in every way. It's knowing that you hold yourself to the highest standard and you want people to come up and meet you there. So vulnerability, a leadership aspect, and then also just, there's one thing that people don't talk about, man. I want people to want to be around him. I want him to have a sense of humor. I want him to bring people together and not divide them. If I'm starting from scratch, I want somebody that tells the best jokes or that's not afraid of looking silly from time to time. People gravitate towards that. People like that. People love being around people like that. So I know that's a weird 3, but as I think about it, like, imagine the people you liked working with or the people that you played with. Like, everybody loved the funny guy. Everybody knew, like, he was going to make the day easier for you. He was going to make it a little bit more enjoyable. And just being a leader and just having this sense of vulnerability, you get a little bit more from everybody because you're true and upfront with everybody, with your feelings and what you're going through and your path and journey to get to where you're at currently.
Drew, I love that athlete you just created, man. Thank you for indulging me in that, because that, as I'm thinking about the things that you've done and the people you've worked with, there's some things that you've drawn out that can really help athletes when you think about, building them from scratch. And so hearing that scratch, and hopefully someone takes that and say, ooh, maybe I need to add this vulnerability piece in there, because the body does keep the score. And so if we're stuffing these feelings down, we're stuffing everything around us, hiding and shifting and shaking from the things that scares us, or we don't want anyone to know. Those are the very, very things that come back and get us later in life. And so, so hopefully somebody hears that, man. So thank you for sharing that. Man, it's been good, and as I started to think about the closing aspect of it, I don't want to do that, but to keep you on schedule, I want to make sure that I'm very respectful of your time, and so when you think about wrapping this show up and thinking about reflection and the things that you've done, if you had to go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say to him?
I think about this often, and I'm probably really hard in saying this, but I would tell them keep that same level of hard work throughout the whole process. I worked hard in middle school, worked hard in high school, worked hard in college, worked hard in the NFL, but then I got comfortable in the NFL. I wish I would have continued to go to film sessions with my quarterbacks and sitting there and see what Matt Ryan was thinking and what the quarterback coach is telling him. I wish I would have just did a little bit more on that level to last a little bit longer. But I'm happy with everything I've done. I just wanted to tell myself just a little bit more, just the hard work, just a little bit more. It's going to get you far, but just 1 or 2% more towards the end when you've reached and accomplished your goal would have taken you to maybe 5 or 10 years in the NFL rather than the 4 that you did. So just a little bit more hard work, and a little bit more just being available to be open to new things while I was playing, to be more available to those opportunities.
Man, that's good. That's good. All right. 2 more questions for you. One mindset shift that every athlete can start today.
I get to instead of I have to. I get to instead of I have to. I know those early mornings waking up for mat drills or for practice or those games, but you don't have to go to those games. You get to. So that's one very big shift that you can make. It changes your perception of what's going on around you. I didn't start thinking that way until I tore my ACL and had everything taken away from me in the snap of a dime. But after I came back from that, it was more not I have to practice today. I get to practice today after having it taken away from me so long. So that's probably the number one thing. You don't have to play the sport. I doubt anybody's holding a gun to your head and making you do it. But if you're going to go out there with that mindset of I get to, and you're going to see a lot better outcomes on the other side.
I get to. All right, man. I get to ask you this last question. Wrapping up the show, you think about different intangibles. You think about the things that have made you who you are. We know we have work ethic. We know we have vulnerability, accountability. Is there anything that we miss, from an intangible that's made Drew who he is today?
Man, selflessness. Selflessness is a big thing. Of course, I want to go out there and score the touchdown and have my name in the paper and see myself on ESPN. But at the end of the day, I wanted us to win, and I wanted to see us win. And so whether that was me catching the ball or the couple people that were behind me that were my backups, I wanted somebody to catch it. I wasn't the person that, you in there? I hope he drop it. I don't want him to drop it. Okay. I wanted everybody to win. I wanted it to be a team effort. And I honestly, at the end of the day, I wanted to be in the locker room partying, singing the fight song and headed out with the family to eat, feeling really good. So there's a lot of money out in the world. They're gonna print money every day till the day we pass away. So there's enough money for everybody. There's enough opportunity for everybody. So I always wanted to see people around me win, regardless if it made me not look in the greatest light or if it took away from me a little bit. I was really comfortable in seeing other people succeed. And I think that's why I coach right now, because I love it when everybody gets to their goals and they accomplish what they're trying to, or they get through this trial and error situation, trial and tribulation era. But I love when people win, because the look on their face and knowing the journey they went through and the work they put in, there's nothing like it. So I would say selflessness also is one intangible that's made Drew Davis a unstoppable force.
Drew, that is character, your selflessness, your vulnerability, your work ethic, man. I appreciate you for what you do. I'm rooting you on. Continue to do what you do, man, at a high elite level. Continue to raising leaders, and especially that last thing you said is raising young gentlemen, because there's something that is a soft skill that is very, very important as we navigate through this world as young men. And so, again, Drew, I really appreciate you joining me on the Intangible Podcast, man. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Chris. Been my pleasure. Come back anytime.
Absolutely. I'm going to hold you to that.